Hey, kia ora koutou whānau. Welcome back to another episode of Big Hearing News. This is the summer series. We're live again from Monday, the 22nd. Let's get into it quickly tonight, shall we? I know I blather on a little bit each start of each show that I don't really need to do, like I'm blathering on right now. A big thanks for joining us during this best of series. Thank you for your grace, because yes, we did need a time off. Chewy is currently traveling internationally, and I'm sleeping as much as I possibly can to get fired up for 2024 when we come back again live next Monday. Tonight on the show, our old mate Karen Plunket screams at guests again. It's kind of like saying Tuesday starts with a T. If Plunket has someone on he disagrees with, he screams at them. It's as obvious as that. But we'll show you an example of that again tonight. David Seymour also tries to convince the public should decide on what the principles of the treaty are. He doesn't reckon Māori should decide. He doesn't reckon the Waitangi Tribunal should decide. The courts should decide. He reckons the public should decide. The most informed people who you can see on Twitter and Facebook should decide what the principles of the treaty are. And also Simon Wilson joined us earlier last year. Actually, I think it was quite early. Do I have a date on that clip? I could have a look, actually. Do I have a date on that clip? Oh, yeah, in May of last year, joined us to say that Luxon has a bit of a climate change dilemma. What is that dilemma? Well, we'll find out more as we go through the evening. This is Big Hearing News, the summer series. Let's get into it. As we say previously, guys, we often commentate on the commentators. It's sort of one of the things we do. And I did want to show a little bit of a clip. And actually, Piri and Samar did something really interesting. And I was wondering how this would play on the other end. But what they did was they actually recorded the conversation that they had with Sean Plunket as well. Now, I wonder if, sometimes you see with Tucker Carlson, someone records the conversation and then it goes to air differently. I wonder if that was part of the rationale or reason for doing it. This is a little bit of the watching the people who are watching or commentating on the commentators. Now, we talked about Sean Plunket and David Farrier just yesterday, yeah? We talked about Sean Plunket getting, it would appear a bit unlikely from Mr. Organ, the release of family court documents that he then disseminated to the public that then caused some of those people hidden in that document to have their names released. Now, that will be interesting to see whether that goes before the courts and that Mr. Plunket has to spend some of that sweet, sweet public money that he's a beneficiary from on defending what he has done. And before anyone says he gets no public money, if you haven't heard the rationale, his funders get $300 million a year from the government. His funders get $300 million a year from the government, and then they fund him. So, yes, there is no question that Sean Plunket is a beneficiary of public money. Someone else might scrub their hands with it, just like someone else might nick the VCR, but you still buy the stolen merchandise. You're still part of the crime. All right. So anyway, so this will sound a bit different because the voices that you hear more clearly are Piri and Samar, and the voice on the phone is Sean Plunket. I would assume they would have had it on speakerphone. And I just wanted to play this bit because Mr. Plunket sets himself up as sort of a journalist, and he sets himself up as someone who, you can send leaks to and he'll disseminate them. When anyone else seems to have information that Sean Plunket doesn't like, all of a sudden, how dare they have that information? How dare they have access to that information? He must tell them right now where that information came from. Yet it's exactly what he does all the time. Let me play you a couple of minutes of this conversation. And this is where they're talking about the kaumātua at that Orewa meeting being berated by people, right?
That made me angry.
That's part of the conversation. And note, Mr. Plunket is more concerned when it's someone else's information as to how they got it, rather than the information itself.
No, if you look at the video of this kaumātua during the Q&A session, speaking as calmly as you've ever seen anyone speak, and then to see him,
who took the video?
And then to see him shouted down.
With you, and how did you get the video?
What?
Sean, in that video, he was asking a question.
Who took the video, and how did you get hold of the video?
Sorry, I'll just finish.
Simple question.
The kaumātua was speaking at the Q&A session.
Who took the video, and how did you get hold of the video?
The video was taken by another member at the attendee of that meeting. I'm not sure what.
Who was aligned with you?
Is it illegal to take videos at public meetings?
Yes, okay. No. So what
no, Sean, please. Look, I'm happy to answer your question, Sean.
This is infiltration of a meeting with someone else there to film it.
literally, Sean, I'm happy to get this person to speak with you as well. I've never met them in my life. They sent us.
See, this is what Plunket does. Now, Perry is defending something that shouldn't be a conversation.
Yeah.
Perry is having to waste time saying, look, we'll get them. It's like, it doesn't matter how they got it. It doesn't matter who they got it. It doesn't matter whether the person went in under false pretenses or not. It was filmed in a public meeting and given to these guys. This is not a conversation that needs to happen. But see, what Mr. Plunket decides to do is he decides to filibuster, right, by filling the time with air, rather than talking about the content of the video. When it's not his information, he's more fucking concerned about how they got that video. It is utterly disgusting.
The video, because this kaumatua was abused by a supporter of Julian, and they were concerned. And then if you look at the comments that have come through on this video, thousands of comments that people being disgusted seeing this disrespect to this kaumatua. And that's not the only thing that I want to say in terms of Julian's disrespect to kaumatua.
Okay, and I'll give you a chance to do that. But righto, I want to go back to Julian for a moment. You will get another chance.
And you'll be surprised, Chewy. Don't trust me, I'm not going to put everyone through that. At no point in this whole conversation around co-governance with the Julian Batchelor did Julian Batchelor get talked over, shouted down, questioned. None of those things. It's really funny, how Piri and Samar were the ones that seem to be, shouted at, talked down to, talked over. I don't. Maybe it's just a coincidence, Chewy. What do you think? Just a coincidence?
Yeah, no, very out of character for Sean Plunket to be an absolute fire hose full of shit. Just absolutely flooding the room with effluent. I mean, yeah, as we said, it was a public meeting.
Yeah.
Who cares if someone's recording? Of course they're going to send it to someone. Why is this great investigation of Sean Plunket unleashing the fact that somebody can send a video in an email? That's probably what he's baffled about. Actually, that's 100% what it is. He didn't know that you could do it over email.
The other thing
look, no, let me speak. How does YouTube work? Tell me now.
Hey, welcome back from the clip that just played. I hope you enjoyed it. I want to let you know that the store is still open this week, and for this last week of the pre-recorded shows, we are increasing the discount. It's basically got some stock left over from last year. It's not in its entirety. We don't have every size, but if you're interested in getting some Beardy Boy gear, you can see that the blue and white caps have sold out. There are black and grey or black on grey caps. There are black on black t-shirts, blue on yellow t-shirts left in some sizes, not all sizes, some sizes. But because it's the last of the summer season and we really want to say thanks for you guys joining us on, if you're interested in getting any of this gear, then I'm going to give you a 40% off discount for this week only. 40% off by heading to bhnshop.nz, and when you get to the checkout, use the promo code SUMMER for 40% off remaining caps and t-shirts if you want to get them. Of course, the store will continue to operate through this year as we come back, but for this week only, some of that stock from last year's could be yours at a 40% discount. bhnshop.nz. Thanks so much for being with us tonight, and I look forward to seeing you on Monday again live. Let's get into another clip. Now, I'm going to go to the conversation around the treaty referendum, but as a part of the conversation with incoming regulation, that just, I shudder down my spine when I think about him being a regulation minister. Basically, his job to cut regulation. So hello, leaky house syndrome coming back again. They did ask him about the same thing, about the that's a good freeze frame actually, because he was going to sleep his way through this fucking 3 years. They did ask him about the tax cuts for smoking, and it's only 60 seconds, so I'm going to play the clip around the Waitangi issue or the treaty issues, but let's have a listen to what he had to say about continuing people smoking so they can give tax cuts.
And I just want to pick up on something that Nicola Willis said there, which is that smokers are going to pay for our tax cuts, or at least part of them now. She seemed to put that onto you, the Party and New Zealand First.
Well, first of all, I think it's worth acknowledging that the current government's trajectory is effectively to force tobacco underground. You're going to have a limited number of places where people can buy tobacco. You're going to ban cigarettes with a lot of nicotine in them. And I suspect that that will take it to about the same place that the cannabis market is at.
Now, there's another point I want to make here. It's really, really important. And I'll play you another clip later on. But just notice what his evidence for the black market is. He says, I suspect, I feel, I think, I'm guessing, right? So he's guessing. This is a guess from a person who thinks it's where it's going to go. No evidence, really important, because later on he talks about how important evidence is. So, but I want you to see and remember, he says, I suspect. No evidence, no backing, no research. It's his guess. His gut tells him.
You're going to ban cigarettes with a lot of nicotine in them. And I suspect that that will take it to about the same place that the cannabis market is at, that you've got a lot of gangs making a lot of money selling it underground. What is now going to happen is that all those dairy owners, it's part of their revenue, all of those people who are law-abiding and don't break any other rules can continue to buy, and the government can continue to tax it. And I think that's a more realistic solution than what the previous government was headed towards.
So I'll play this before we get into the Waitangi thing, because when it came to tax cuts and when it came to issues around tax, he's very keen to make sure they make decisions based on evidence. So I'm going to play this for you again. This is on my Twitter feed right now, and I'll play the first clip, which he suspects, and then I'll go into the second clip from the same interview as to how he's approaching other policy.
Well, first of all, I think it's worth acknowledging that the current government's trajectory is effectively to force tobacco underground. You're going to have a limited number of places where people can buy tobacco. You're going to ban cigarettes with a lot of nicotine in them. And I suspect that that will take it to about the same place that the cannabis market is at, that you've got a lot of gangs making a lot of money selling it underground.
Right, I suspect. So he's making policy on suspicions, guessing, feelings, as Chewy would say a lot before the election, the vibes. But when it comes to tax breaks, how do they make policy?
I think it's a very good example of how we commit to work together, be evidence-based, find the best policy.
Oh, hang on. You need to be evidence-based. Hang on, they're feeling different.
This is very confusing.
It's very confusing because the first one was the vibes is how you make policy, but now it appears you're saying you need to be evidence-based.
Work together, be evidence-based, find the best policies for New Zealand with everyone bringing something to the table.
So, Rimmer, what does evidence say about smoking and continuing it on? Well, what the evidence says is 8,000 more dead New Zealanders by 2040, but you suspect it might do a bit of a black market. So that's confusing to me, Chewy, because it sounds like he's picking and choosing whether he goes with the vibe or the evidence based on his internal narrative. I'm confused by that. So you got any thoughts?
It's almost like the man has no personal fucking integrity.
Yeah.
Look, it's really hard to maintain a coherent position on that sort of stuff when you look at your donation list. And you go, that's right, those guys bought something. Fuck. Oh well, never mind. Remember, cannabis equals gang member. Cannabis equals dirty hippie. No one likes dirty hippies.
Yeah.
Cigarette, cool guy, action hero, Bruce Willis,
Fonzie,
Mad Men, Fonzie,
Yep.
cool.
Hey.
Freedom, cowboy, no bad connotations at all. It's these guys. I would love to hang around Parliament and see who goes for a smoke break.
Well, have you noticed over the weekend there's been pictures of Winston Peters smoking all over media? Of course he has.
Yeah, because the man can't die. His lungs are made of horse leather that he got from the racing industry. He is unkillable. We had a chance, and then, like a vampire, Luxon invited him back into the house, and now you can't get rid of him.
It's very true, because if you're a vampire to come into the house, you have to be invited. It's very, very true. JK on the super chat, thank you for the $10, JK. Appreciate that. Just for a few thousand deaths, your landlord can get a tax break.
That's a good vibe. For those renters out there, I hope you're counting the days for the rent reductions.
Yeah,
to kick in, right? Because that's going to happen.
Downward pressure. We've been told downward pressure will be down. But remember, Luxon wouldn't commit to his rental properties dropping their prices. But downward pressure is coming because of these, and landlords are going to be happier, and so are the renters. We're being told. Why would the renter be happier? The landlord makes more money off depreciation and being able to claim some of that those interest payments back. How's that going to make the tenant? You really think they're going to pass it on? Oh, that's right, like they do all the time, and pass on those savings. So thank you for the super chat, JK. We appreciate it. Right, let's get into the other part of this conversation with Rimmer, talking about the referendum that he didn't get. That he thinks this is a good thing for New Zealand. It's not going to be divisive, and it's actually going to create a harmonious New Zealand, because all of a sudden your racist Uncle Bob in Nelson is going to be able to have his say on what he thinks the principles of the treaty is about, because that's what it comes down to. He talks about the courts have had their say, the Waitangi Tribunal has had its say, the public service has had its say about defining the treaty principles, but what fucking Rimmer wants is racist Uncle Bob from Nelson, sorry Nelson, no offense, to be able to have his say. That's what he wants, because that's actually the person who's most informed. Waitangi Tribunal, obviously no shit. You know, the courts, nah, you don't know what you're talking about. But dirty old Uncle Rick, who puts all those memes up about, the trans agenda on his Facebook page, he's got to have his say, because he's the voice we're waiting to hear from, Chewy, to get all this racial division sorted out.
Democracy manifest.
Let's have a look.
The treaty principles, you didn't get the referendum, but you did get this treaty principles bill to be introduced and supported to select committee. What is the point of that? Because the other parties have said outrightly, not going to happen. The referendum.
Well, the Treaty Principles Act is actually the piece of law that would be confirmed by referendum if it goes all the way through the three readings. So the other parties were a bit sceptical about that, and we said, okay, well, let's just get it through the first step, draft the bill, debate it, send it to a select committee, allow people to have a say about our treaty principles. And I suspect that people actually are going to really welcome that conversation, that it's going to be a positive thing. That
people are going to welcome it, and it's going to be positive. I've just been hearing.
We're all going to be holding hands in the street, Pat. It's going to be fucking lit.
All that commentary from Māori elders and stuff around the country over the last few days have all been saying that. Oh, hang on, no, they've been saying the opposite. But Rimmer knows, and racist Uncle Bob, they know. It's going to be kumbaya, peace, love, and mung beans for everybody.
The people who are out there saying this is all terrible and you're not allowed to have that debate, say, hang on a minute. Debating the principles of the treaty actually increases the mana of the treaty, because we're finally talking about it democratically. We haven't done that. It's all been decided in back rooms in the courts, the Waitangi Tribunal, and the public service.
Yeah.
It does depend how it's debated.
I mean, what the fuck does the Waitangi Tribunal know, Chewy? I mean, about Māoridom and the treaty, what would they know? I mean, racist Uncle Bob, he knows a thing or two. Waitangi Tribunal, what do those dicks know?
The nature of that debate.
I agree, and I just suspect that after we go through that process, the other parties might just change their mind and decide it's a good thing they want, or they might not. But we've secured to get it that far, and I think that is tremendous progress after 40 years of Parliament saying there are principles, but refusing to say what they are.
Ever the optimist, but Christopher Luxon was saying as recently as yesterday, absolutely not. That they would support it through that first bill stage, but that they wouldn't absolutely not support it beyond that. So what is, I suppose, you've criticised the current government.
He hasn't said that.
He said it on News Talk ZB.
There's been some confusion. He was asked if they had any commitment to do it, to support it beyond that.
So you think the door is open?
Absolutely.
Okay. Because the government, you've criticised the Labour government for sort of its pet projects and, spending a lot of time and energy on them. This does seem like the same thing if it's not going to go anywhere.
It's an absolutely critical debate about what our founding document means to us in modern times. That has to happen. 2 years ago when we raised the prospect, nobody supported the idea of a referendum. Now it's a live debate that is going to get at least some way through the parliamentary process and potentially further. The idea that having a proper understanding of what our founding document really means, decided by all people, is, as you say, a pet project. I think that's probably a poor choice of words.
Now this is the other thing, a proper understanding of what our founding document means according to all people. Like, racist Uncle Bob. Look, respectfully, me, Chewy. I know I'm not the fucking person to figure that out. But this is the virtue signaling. This is the, his funders and his supporters and his voters want this. He is suggesting that democracy means the people of New Zealand can decide what this founding document means. Now, in one way, that's basically saying we can make it mean whatever we want. Then what? Like, hang on, academics, historians, experts, Waitangi Tribunal, courts, people who work in this world. Like, could you imagine going to the mechanic, Stewie, right? And rather than listening to the mechanic, this is what's wrong with the engine, going, well, hang on, I want to ask all the people on the forecourt if they know. Because if we do this democratically, then we'll get to the answer as to what's wrong with my car. No. You go to the expert, you go to the mechanic, you don't go, well, you don't know anything. I'm gonna ask those 3 ladies over there filling up their cars. They're gonna know something. It's just lunacy.
Like, on one hand, I'm glad that it's a bill. It's got to pass. There's no fucking way it's going to pass. Like, that is my shred of hope there. The thing that is going to do the damage here is just the discussion of it. Right?
Yeah, of course.
It's like you can't turn around to an entire country with a European descent majority, and just people are thinking it's a good discussion. No, they're not. They're going to come at it from a position of absolute fucking ignorance, because that's what there has been around any discussion of the treaty for as long as I've been alive.
Yeah.
Like, if Māori get anything, then they're greedy. Like, I have a really clear memory of the Ngāi Tahu settlement. And one of the things that the Ngāi Tahu were asking, which really got people up in arms in Timaru, I tell you what, the letters that went to the Timaru Herald that I remember, whoa, people were hot. Can you believe that the South Island tribe were asking for Mount Cook?
Mm.
They were asking for a mountain that was named after the greatest Royal Navy middle manager that's ever been. And they were just going to take it. And then we weren't going to be able to look at the mountain, I assume.
They'd probably move it to their backyard.
Do you know what the Ngāi Tahu did?
What's that?
Greedy pricks. They added another name. Now it's Aoraki Mount Cook, which is, of course, it's like I've broken out in a migraine even trying to keep those 2 names in my head at the same time. And then the pricks donated it back to all the people of New Zealand.
There's got to be a catch.
Those
there's got to be a catch.
Bastards.
Now,
you've
led us into our next topic.
We want to put it out to a referendum. Because suddenly everybody in New Zealand is a bona fide treaty settlement expert.
Yeah.
Get fucked.
Hey team, welcome back. Thanks so much for being with us tonight in this best of series, the summer series, as we take a bit of a break, but we're back live again from next Monday. Just remember that. Huge thanks to our patrons. Love having you guys on board, especially during this period where views are down and the shop's not really getting used. So these beautiful people here are helping us continue to pay the bills that don't go away, even though we have gone away during the holiday period. A huge thanks to all of our beautiful patrons who help us pay the bills. We've had a few new patrons coming on board whilst we've been away. This is not my word, this is theirs. A patron that called themselves Incompetent. That's just the name. And Rob are a couple of people who have signed up during this holiday period. If you're interested in joining on board in what we're doing, you'll want to help support us, and head to patreon.com/Big Hairy News to be a patron, as that helps us to continue to do what we're doing through the year. Thanks so much to all of our patrons. We love you to bits. We will continue right now with the summer series with another pre-recorded clip from last year, and we'll see you on Monday night from 9 p.m. live again. Let's bring in a senior writer at the New Zealand Herald. He is a friend of the show. It is Simon Wilson. Hello, Simon.
Hi there, Pat.
Now, have you paid your fee? Have you paid your fee to come on tonight? because all of our people now have to pay us a fee to come on and speak because that's how we're going.
Okay. So, right. Okay. Can I do it in like chocolate fish or something?
Yeah,
or
that's perfect.
how will
Actually,
it work?
that's absolutely perfect. That's absolutely perfect. Lovely to have you on, Simon. We love having you on.
Like just one each, right?
Well, I get two.
We're not going to share.
I
Not
get
gonna
two.
share.
I get two, and two gets one. That's how it works.
Oh,
But then I have to
okay.
give my two away because I'm still dieting, so I end up with none. But that's my choice, so that's fine. It's like if I get $20 and give it to my kids because that's what seems to happen when you're a parent. I still technically got the $20, but I just don't see any value from it. Anyway, let's move on. We love having you on, Simon. We love talking about the topics that you write about as a senior writer at the New Zealand Herald. Really interesting article that was out. It was out today, wasn't it? 23rd?
Yep,
Yeah, out today. Yep. Climate change. Simon Wilson says Christopher Luxon gets it right and terribly wrong on New Zealand steel. I'm actually going to just read the first part of this, and then I want to get your thoughts, and we're going to expand on the whole conversation. Christopher Luxon is right, says Simon Wilson. He says government should not be paying for the multinational corporates to reduce their carbon emissions when they're perfectly capable of doing it themselves. But Luxon is also ridiculously wrong. Here's why. NZ Steel, which is owned by the Australian company BlueScope, will receive up to $140 million from the government to install an electric arc furnace at its Glenbrook plant. This will reduce its carbon emissions by 45%. BlueScope made a record Australian 2.81 billion in profit last year. It doesn't need the bribe. Subsidy. But New Zealand Steel boss Robin Davies blithely told Radio New Zealand yesterday it would not have taken this step on its own because there would be no direct financial benefit. In the next breath, he had the nerve to add insult to injury by declaring that everybody is committed to fighting climate change. So, Simon, we can see why Mr. Luxon might have been right. And I think we would all agree with you. If you've got profits of 2.81 billion, you can pay 140 million yourself. Why was he wrong?
Why he's wrong is that the way in which we need to fight climate change is that all the levers have to be pushed. Now, that's a phrase that our mayor in Auckland, Wayne Brown, likes to use when he's talking about cutting budgets. But there are carrots and sticks. There are, in other words, there are incentives and there have to be regulations as well. We know there's a couple of big things we know about climate change. And the first one is that the big corporates and actually the wealthiest people in the world are way disproportionately more responsible for the crisis we're in than the rest of us. I don't have the figures to hand, but there's a very, very tiny number of people and corporates that are responsible for well over half the world's emissions.
Right.
That's the first thing we know. The second thing we know is that they're actually not doing very much about it. And we're talking about obviously fossil fuel companies, and that's companies that are engaged in coal and oil and gas. The companies like car companies that work with them. The finance companies that prop them up, that enable them to do their business, and the governments that prop both of those sectors up as well. So knowing those two things, that actually there is a problem that is principally caused by that sector and that they are not doing the things they need to do, we need a range of tools to address them. And at one end of the extreme, and we may want to talk about this, one end of the extreme is people who stop coal mines from producing coal, stop oil pipelines from functioning by puncturing them. Those sorts of actions, that's at one end of it. And at the other end of it is governments that are doing their best to pull those big polluters into line. Now, I believe that the principal weapon that government should use to do that is regulation. I believe that the government should be saying, for example, we're going to put a limit on the number of internal combustion engine vehicles that can be imported into this country, and it's going to come soon. And we're certainly going to put a limit on the number of particularly harmful ones that are imported. So we really try and speed up that transition. I believe those regulations are vital. But for all those corporates, that are part of this whole problem, there also has to be incentives. There also has to be ways to say to them, okay, if we spend a bit of money with you, will that tip you from being outside the tent into being inside the tent? Yeah, and I think that's what the government's done here. So Luxon's right to say these corporates don't need the incentive, but actually the incentive has tipped New Zealand Steel from being a company that was sitting outside the tent to one that has a capacity now to be at least partly in the tent. And that's going to be a good thing for us.
It seems interesting as well, because I don't want to speak on behalf of Mr. Luxon, although he would love me to. But typically on the right, I think you get stuck in this quagmire that they don't want to necessarily impose more cost on business, but then they also, which would be like a stick, you know, but they don't want to also give away taxpayers' monies to business, which would be a carrot, but they also don't want to then add more regulations. In fact, this upcoming potential government has said, you know, and they're not an upcoming government yet, but if National get in, they've talked about, you know, for every new regulation coming in straight out of Trump's playbook, we're going to take 2 out. So it's like, what is a right-wing government in general actually left with to encourage a group to get on board with climate change when actually they probably don't want to regulate, they don't want to give away money, and they don't want to hand out a stick in some form of fine against their business buddies?
I tell you what, in my view, we're looking at the modern form of denialism. Denialism used to be climate change doesn't exist. And then it was climate change does exist, but it's not really relevant to us. And then it was, well, actually, yeah, we do have those floods, we do have those droughts, so it is relevant to us, but we can't do anything about it. And there are still a lot of people saying that, but those who have moved past that are still finding other ways to say there's no way in which that all the suggestions you're making for how we deal with this, they're just not quite good enough. It's not quite good enough to deal with New Zealand Steel this way. It's not quite good enough to have that fee-based scheme. It's not, on and on and on and on. And what it all adds up to is we're not going to do anything. And if you're in position in this debate is actually we don't think we should do anything, it's just going to sort itself out in some way. That is a form of denialism. I think I was going to say there's another factor that comes in with this. I chaired a panel in the Auckland Writers' Festival over the weekend on climate change, and I asked the question of the panelists: do they think climate change is a left-wing issue, or is it an issue that everybody should be getting involved with?
Right.
Do you believe that the causes of the climate crisis are the same as the causes of poverty and therefore have to be fought in the same way? Or do you believe that actually those are the big emitters, those are the finance companies that prop them up, and we need them to stop, and therefore we need them to understand this is their fight too? And I don't have a settled position on that argument, actually. But when the Luxons of this world and the Simeon Browns as his transport spokesperson keep saying, oh, none of that's good enough, that's just wrong, we can't do it that way, we can't do it that way, we can't do it that way. When they keep saying all that, to my mind, they box themselves into a corner. Why would you leave it to the left? If you are serious at all, if you're on the right in this country or anywhere, and you think climate change is a problem, why do you leave it to the left? Why don't you come out with a coherent policy that will make a difference and that will work, and own this thing yourself?
The article finishes with something echoing just what you've said. You say this: it's time for National Party to step off the sidelines of the climate debate. Luxon said yesterday he was, quote, on the side of Kiwi battlers, end quote. It's an insidious form of climate denialism to suggest, quote, Kiwi battlers, end quote, don't need climate action and or need a government to prepare the force, cajole, and to be prepared to force, cajole, and when necessary bribe big emitters into it. That's what you're basically saying there, right? It's like, it's that kind of fish or cut bait. It's time to either get in or be honest about the denialism. Don't just kind of use mealy-mouthed kind of code words. What do we call it? Wolf whistles? No, not wolf whistles. Dog whistles.
Dog whistles.
Wolf whistles.
I think you're right. This problem will solve itself somewhere down the line because of market forces and because we're all going to have lots of windmills and solar anyway, and we'll all drive EVs and it'll solve itself. In other words, nobody has to do anything. If you know, that's not how it works. That's not how the world works. That's not how climate action is coming at us, how the climate crisis is coming at us. And it is a way of simply saying, I'm just going to bury my head in the sand for a while here, and I hope it'll go away. And,
I mean, this is obviously something the government's been working on for a little while to make this big announcement that it's all done and dusted. And I think the fact of, like, if it was a negotiation along the lines of, we need you to do this, and if you agree to it, then we're going to give you this money.
Yeah.
It's an immediate sort of thing, right? It's underway now, and it's funded from the ETS.
That's right. Funded from the ETS. That's right. Yeah. Yeah, that's right. So it's funded from the ETS. They have been working on it for a while, and there is a strategic value to us. This is a company that was saying less than a year ago, if you apply the ETS to us, we're going to close up shop in New Zealand. There will not be steel produced in New Zealand. Now, James Shaw, the climate change minister, has, in my view, quite rightly said, we need a more circular economy in this country. We need the capacity. Manufacturing and industry need the capacity to have locally produced steel. And if we can do it in a greener way, it's not just good for the emissions that are reduced because we're doing it in a more green way. It's also good for the circular economy. So in the case he uses here is that old cars, instead of being shipped offshore and God knows where they end up, those cars will now be, the scrap metal will now be melted down, resmelted, and turned into new steel for new uses. And I suggested in my column that I'm absolutely looking forward to buying a bicycle made from scrapped double cab utes.
Hey, let me get both of your opinion on this, because there's something that you've written in the article as well, which speaks to what we're talking about, but also I think more broadly to what often the right do to kind of wash their hands of things. And that's they go, we just trust people. We'll trust they'll do the right thing. You say this. This is Christopher Luxon speaking. I've gone and met with the CEO and the management team of New Zealand Steel and saw the site myself late last year. I really like the direction of where they're going, but they are quite capable of fronting up the $140 million themselves. You go on to say he trusts the company to do the right thing on its own. After they did a snow job on him last year, it's absurdly naive, and Davies had frankly admitted as much. We hear this a lot. We hear this with David Seymour. These ideas that we can trust people to do the right thing. It is always ironic when they say that sort of thing about tax and money and, you know, carrot and stick, but they won't say that kind of thing about things like cannabis or back in the day about same-sex marriage or whatever. So they seem to want to trust people, business, when it comes to this sort of thing and not other ways. But I guess I'll ask both of you, Chewy, you can jump in on this as well, obviously. Is this a tactic of the right to kind of push it down the street? It's like we can trust them; they'll do the right thing. I've done my bit. Is that what he's doing, Simon?
If you go back and you think Luxon comes out of that world, you know, when he walked into the boardroom at New Zealand Steel, I imagine he felt pretty much at home. He is comfortable in boardrooms. Now that is his background, and so there's a language they talk to each other, and they would have recognized it. And that if you look at any of the pronouncements about climate change that corporate leaders make, sometimes there's serious content there, but a lot of the time it's the cliche term is greenwash, but it's also you can recognize in it a real desire to do this in a way that we'll only do this if it makes us money. And I don't know, I just have a real problem with that. We expect citizens to be good citizens, and I think we should expect corporate citizens to be good corporate citizens. And we live in a time now where that has to mean nobody can only be acting on the basis of, am I going to be able to make a buck out of this? Yeah, we have.
I'm glad you mentioned that, you know, trusting people to be good citizens and that sort of thing. And I think there's a fundamental thing here with the right-wing parties, in that they'll trust giant corporate entities with massive profits to do, you know, they'll eventually do the right thing. We definitely don't want to regulate them. that'll scare them off and they'll run away. But people, the citizenry, do not get that same. You know,
Exactly.
they're not trusted. They're not trusted to raise their kids right. They're not trusted to put their lives back on track. You know, there's lots of regulation. There's lots of stick there if you're an individual. But if you're a company, of a massive international conglomeration, we're all kind of like, oh, we're so glad that you're here in our little country. We're just going to let you do what you want. You know, we've seen that with Comelco and Rio Tinto and that sort of thing. And I'm sure, you know, the very prospect of steel production heading offshore would have scared the shit out of people.
Yeah.
So maybe this is the best way forward, is that we've gone, hey, look, well, if you're going to do this, we'll have a negotiation. Here's some money in the pot. Job done. Big hit off our carbon emissions. We don't have to talk about regulations.
It is the biggest hit off our carbon emissions of any single thing that's been done, which is not to say it's all that big. It's going to, we're told it's going to reduce them by 1%, which clearly shows you how big the task is in front of us.
Yeah. As a little side note, Simon, you would have heard us while you were in the waiting room talking about people asking for merch and stuff. I've just come up with our first T-shirt. You ready for this, guys? So
Yeah.
on the between the shoulder blades, we'll have BHN, and on the front, we'll have Luxon. He's a board member, not a businessman, because you reminded me of that, which is something we've been saying here for weeks, Simon. He's not a businessman, he's a board member. So I think I've got our first T-shirt. I think we might have to talk to your missus, Cherry, about designing us a T-shirt.
Just speaking of that, businessmen and board members, can I just crave your indulgence to talk about just something else that was in my column today as well?
If you have to. No, of course.
Got a moment.
We're here.
Okay.
Yeah, of course.
I'm absolutely sick. We had budget last week, right? I'm absolutely sick of hearing from business leaders telling us that there's this or that in a budget or an economic pronouncement, and they are narrowly focused on what will it do for the business in terms of its bottom line.
Yes.
And I used the example of the Employers and Manufacturers Federation, who were complaining along those lines. And I used the example of the childcare, the extension of the childcare subsidy. Childcare subsidies are good for business. You know, they're good for parents and they're particularly good for the children, but they're also good for business because they produce more productive workers who find it easier to keep up because they can go back to work more easily. They produce happier workers. All those things are good for a productive economy and therefore good for business as well. And on top of that, children who go through good childcare get to 5 and get to school, and they are not behind the other kids. And because they're not behind the other kids, they're not going to stay behind the other kids. And because of that, they are less likely to drop out to become the kids who grow up to become real problems. Yeah. Childcare is incredibly important for producing, apart from all the social goods it produces, it's incredibly important for producing numerate and literate and educated workers for business. And it's about time, in my view, that business started to talk like that.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think we made the
100%.
same. I think we made the same point, Simon, about the $5 prescription fee as well.
Exactly.
It's like if people can get their medicine and get well sooner, and parents don't have to stay home with kids, and they can get back to work, and kids don't miss days of school. You know, these social issues or these social policies aren't seen by, as you're saying, people as being good for business, but they fucking are. Of course they are.
Yeah.
It's real shallow thinking. It's just very surface. We'll take it on the headline. We won't dig deeper. I mean, I saw someone saying that for every $1 we spend on the prescription subsidy, getting rid of that, then the country gets like $9 back out of productivity. That's a good deal.
Yeah.
You know, I think. Yeah, I think talking about business.
I know a doctor at Middlemore Hospital who believes that's just the single best thing that she's heard in a very long time because of what we'll do for the people they deal with. You know, yeah.
Hey, we've encouraged people to join us live because we're live tonight, Simon. It's not a pre-record. So let's just there's lots of comments in there. Let's get a couple of comments up about this conversation, and then we'll let you go, Simon, and we'll move on. Politically, says, trusting people to be good citizens is nice, but corporations are like those twats who claim to be sovereign citizens to get out of facing consequences for their actions. Money is universal language.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Politically says, Sunset says if Labor didn't help fund New Zealand Steel and other businesses in CO2 reduction, Luxon would go on. I'm going to just adapt this a little bit for Sunset. Luxon would go on and on and on and on and on and on and on about Labor adding cost to business. But when Labor give funding, they're spending too much. Yeah. So it's you can't win. It's a lose-lose as far as Nationals saying at the time. All right, now Simon, because we've just gone into another topic, is there anything else you'd like to wrap up with before we move on?
No, I've done that. Thank you.
Okay, good. It's always amazing to talk to you, Simon. We really enjoy having you as a part of the show. Thanks for coming on tonight, and I'm sure we'll talk to you super soon.
Thank you, Pat. Thank you, Cheery.
All right, team, that's us. We're done for the night. I got told off last week that you guys weren't prepared for the finishes of the show, so this is just a little recorded outro to go, that's it. We're done. And remember, tell the world, spread it around. Monday the 22nd, next Monday, we are back live from 9 p.m. here on Big Hearing News. But for right now, hope you enjoy.